Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Horror Within Me. My name is Eric, but I go by Foxy Batman. I grew up in a very chaotic household, and as a means of escape, I immersed myself into the world of horror. Recently, I decided to pursue my passion and start my own horror podcast to talk about all things in the horror universe. So with that being said, let's go get spooky. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of The Horror Within Me. I am your host, Foxy Batman. I am very, very, very excited for today's episode because that's me banging. It is all about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, let's be clear. It is not based on the movie, but the television show. I was 10 years old when Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the television show, came out. Now, I was a fan of the movie from, as much of a fan I could be at a young age. And my mother knew how much I loved Buffy. So when the show was being announced, she told me, you should check this out. It's on the WB. You might enjoy it. So I decided to take her up because, I trusted her, opinion. And she knew me pretty well. So she might be onto something. I never would have guessed it would have turned into what it turned into for myself. And I just think this is the perfect time to do my episode. I've been wanting to do the Buffy episode, and I just haven't done it yet. This is a solo episode. There are no guests today. But for those of you who do not know, this month, March, marks 25 years since the premiere of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So it's a very special month, and it's a perfect time to dive in, dissect, and discuss all the seasons, what I loved about it, little things that I take away from it, how I've applied it to my now adult life. I'm just a super, super fan. I have watched the series countless times. I can't even keep track on how many times I've watched from beginning to end, including most recently, about a year ago, I watched the entire series yet again with my husband, who had never seen it because, he was born later on and wasn't really watching that kind of stuff. But let's jump in. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the premise of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's really simple. It's what it sounds. It's a girl named Buffy. She's a vampire slayer. What does that mean? So what it means for this show is that I'm going to quote this show, in every generation, there is a chosen one. She alone will stand against the forces of evil and blah, 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 blah. So she is your typical sophomore in high school. She lived in LA. She got kicked out of school. She ends up in Sunnydale, California. And she's a vampire slayer, and they have special strength and power, and they have someone they call the Watcher, who guides and trains them to fight the forces of darkness and the vampires. So we meet young Buffy Summers in season 1, and I remember thinking, this is not exactly how the movie was. And then I quickly realized that we were going to be doing something very different, and I think that's when I realized how much I'm going to like the show. We meet our main cast right off the bat. We meet Angel, Buffy, Giles, Xander, and Willow. And they just start establishing their friendship pretty much off the bat. And I think that I liked that aspect. I thought it was really fun how they changed the way the vampires look. Not just about pointy teeth, but an actual demonic kind of face that they turn into. So they walk around and they look like normal boys and girls and teenagers and men and women. But when they're ready to feed or expose who they really are, their face changes, and they're big, pointed teeth, but they have little sharp teeth around it as well. And this real crinkly forehead, kind of demonic protrusions on their on their heads. Those of you who were fans of the show know exactly what I'm talking about. So season 1 is about establishing the groundwork for the series, right? You know, we don't know. They don't know if it's going to stick, if it's going to be popular or not. I'm sure they didn't realize how much it was going to take off. But I think it was only about 12 episodes, season 1. Not really entirely sure. But yeah, so we're in season 1, and we learn that Sunnydale's on a hellmouth. We meet the popular girl Cordelia Chase, who is, for lack of better, comparison, who Buffy Summers used to be in LA. The popular, superficial girl who cared about looks and money and social status. You're back at, what you could think of as mean girls, So Buffy had to change, and she became more of an outcast because she had to become secretive, and nobody's allowed to know that she's the Vampire Slayer. So it becomes very quickly an isolated and lonely kind of existence. And so she gets to Sunnydale, and she thinks that, nothing is going to, things are going to be different there, and that she doesn't have to do this. And that's quickly different when Giles realizes who she is, because Giles is her watcher and has been waiting for her. And he pulls out the book, and he's so excited, and finds out that she's not excited to be the Slayer, and she's very defiant. She doesn't want this life. And so he pursues and tells her this is her destiny, and she's like, blah, 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 typical teenager. And, we're getting through the first episode. She meets Angel. She doesn't know much about him. And Xander and Willow, I think, is when they start to establish a relationship with her, and the club and the bronze which is a real big staple throughout the entire series. And Willow and Xander get taken off by, taken advantage of and whisked away by vampires. So Buffy tries to find them, and their friend, I don't remember the kid's name anymore. But there was 3 of them. It was Xander, Jesse, and Willow. So anyway, we're going to just get through this. It was a 2-part opening. It was 2 hours. I loved it. 10-year-old me going 11. I loved everything about it. I was like, okay, this is going to be my new favorite show. And it was. And it was for the next 7 years of my life, from 10 to 17. Every Tuesday night, it was on the WB at 8 o'clock. And then I went to UPN, I believe, at season 6. Still watched it faithfully. Never missed an episode. If there was something going on in my life, I just found a way to watch Buffy. So anyway, season 1 is about the master, very, very, very old, ancient vampire. And he scared the fuck out of me when I was a kid, because he looked terrifying. He had like this whole leather outfit, but he had really long nails. He was bald, super, super pale, reddish eyes, and his face was terrifying. And he's trapped in this underground church, by a magical force field or whatever. And he sends his minions and vampires and, to try and get the Slayer. There's a whole prophecy coming, right? So throughout the season, I one of my few favorite episodes, I think, obviously I love the first 2. The first, it establishes the whole show. Welcome to the Hellmouth. The witch episode, you don't realize, with Amy becoming such a character later on, how important that episode is in the beginning of the series, which is what I liked about the writing and the direction of the show. I think which what kept me involved is that I think that was the second episode of the entire series, and the character from there was built into the entire series of the show. That's not something you see all the time. There's not just characters, and there are just characters that they put into this, but a lot of them you see again, you hear about them again. They're a part of it in an actual world. They're not just written in for an episode to fill space. So they build character development, not just with the main cast, but with cast that has been around the cast, if that makes sense. So anyway, another episode I thought was kind of funny and really kind of disturbing was the hyena episode. Everyone knows what I'm talking about if you watch Buffy. And also, spoiler alert for anyone listening to this podcast that has not seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I will be spoiling a lot. So if that's something that you're interested in watching, or you don't care about spoilers, continue listening. If you want to watch the show and you haven't yet, come back to this episode after you've watched it and then tell me how you thought about it. The hyena episode, Xander gets possessed by a hyena and a couple other classmates. And that one was kind of weird to me, but they eat Principal Flutie. And I was like, wow, this is graphic. I think they ate the pig first. Poor pig. And that kind of laid out some ground rules that, they were not holding back. Like, they were taking on different roles that happened in high school and putting like a hellmouth twist on it. So like this episode would be about like bullies, and these hyenas were laughing and teasing all the people and making fun of the students, but then they turned it into up 1,000 and made them eating possessed hyenas. So it sounds weird, but you know what I mean. Another episode I really liked was The Anointed One, where the vampires come and attack a bus load of people, and they're not sure. And Buffy is on a date, and they decide to go to the funeral home because Giles is locked there because he's trying to find the Anointed One and trying to give Buffy a balance in life, which I thought was cool because she wants to be a normal girl. He's trying to help her have the best of both worlds, but that's never the case. It doesn't happen in anything in life, especially not when you're the chosen vampire slayer, the only girl in the entire world. So Xander and Willow find her and her date and tell them that they should double date to the cemetery or the funeral home because there's some friends there and, some code words, blah, blah, blah. And they get there, and the Anointed One ends up being the little boy that was on the bus. And I thought that was a way to make it seem like, show innocence in evil, kind of like an Omen kind of catch. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, and we're going to talk about Angel. Revealing Angel to be a vampire with a soul was, now the kids that are listening who haven't seen Buffy or watched it later on, Buffy set the groundwork. This was before Twilight and sparkly vampires. So Buffy and Angel were the premise of all those vampire love stories, in my opinion. He was a vicious demon vampire and was cursed with a soul. So Buffy finds out that he's a vampire, but doesn't know what to do and decides she needs to kill him because that's what she was born and destined to do regardless, and blah, blah, blah. Obviously, she doesn't kill him. But I think, Darla being his sire, which means, she turned him, and they were together for centuries until he got his soul and found redemption and went, to fight evil and, go to LA and follow Buffy and all that blah, 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 blah. So we're building all these characters. We're building all this story in the first season. It's a lot of information to take in. It's a lot of jumping around. And I'm not here to give you a step-by-step of every episode and how we get to where we get. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, go watch it. It's my opinion. So the season finale of season 1, Buffy wants to go to the dance, and she has this really pretty dress, but she overhears Angel and Giles talking that the prophecy is for her to die, and it doesn't sit well with her. And I remember watching this episode and thinking, wow, this is 16, and she comes out and she has a but she has like a valid, meltdown where she's throwing books and she's crying, and she said she quit and she's not gonna fight the master. She doesn't want to die, and that's it. But she's a good person, and eventually she realizes that it is what it is. So she kind of gets dressed and she gets her little crossbow, and then the Anointed One, the little boy, finds her like he's supposed to take her to the master. And so she follows him down into the sewers, into the underground areas and to where the church is ultimately to face against the master. So when they find out that she's gone, Angel and Xander go to try and help her. And so during this time, the master's talking and, being all mysterious and unseen. And you just hear his voice and she's looking, trying to hunt him. And she shoots at him and he misses or whatever. What I thought was clever and what I didn't see coming is when he shows up behind her and he's got like some weird powers that like other, vampires don't have, like almost like a Dracula thrall where he can kind of make her not move or, whatever. He did some weird Mojo Jojo shit. And he tells her that the prophecy doesn't detail everything and that it left out one really important part, which was the only way that he would be free or be able to get her is if she came. He couldn't kill her or do anything if she never never came to him. He would just be trapped there. And then she realizes that's where her flaw was. And then he bites her and she falls into the water. And then he breaks out and he's free. The master is now out and about. And then Angel and Xander come. They find her and she's dead. She's in there. And Xander gives her CPR and brings her back. And so basically, we find out at this point that the Hellmouth is actually underneath the library. And Cordelia at this point is kind of involved. Miss Calendar, who is the computer teacher that kind of Giles likes, and she likes him. And they're all in the library. And the Hellmouth earthquake happens and it starts breaking through the ground and coming out. And it's these 3-headed, long, worm-looking monster thing, which was screeching and screaming. And the master's going there and he's on the roof. And Buffy comes and, there they are. They're fighting on the roof. She ends up, throwing him through the glass and killing him. He gets impaled through a wooden break in the table or something like that. So that's season 1. She's just not sure how to take it, right? So you're like, okay, this is interesting. And then you still have season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that's pretty much how season 1 went. And from there, there's so much ground to cover. I don't even know where to begin. So I think highlights would be best. Season 2 is probably one of my most favorite seasons. It really took season 1 as an introduction to what they were telling the story and introducing the world to Buffy. And then season 2 was like telling us more character development and what ultimately we were going to be. And season 2 also introduces us to Spike and Drusilla and, more teen and drama, I guess would be the word. But it's really the Buffy and Angel love story that I think season 2, I love. It's really a heartbreaking kind of season. Buffy and Angel end up, being in love and being together. And then she decides that she wants to have him be her first and they end up having sex. But, instead of, how they have the story of, girls who lose their virginity to these guys and then they turn out to be someone different, they change. He really did change. Angel physically lost his soul. He was not supposed to ever, the curse was to never experience that kind of pleasure. And so he lost his soul and now he's back to Angelus, the most evil vampire there is, and begins fixating and stalking and torturing Buffy and her friends in sick, sadistic ways. I remember one episode when Willow was on the phone with him on the phone with Buffy, and she's like, "Where's the fish?" And she can't find her fish. And she opens an envelope that's on the bed because he would drop off envelopes, and inside would be like hand drawn pictures. Like one was of Buffy sleeping. This one, she opened it and she pulled out a string, and all of her fish were on the string. Like he took them out and killed them. Like he's been in their houses, so he has access. He can come in. Very weird episode. Very weird and sad events that happened in this season. Especially when. So we have Jenny Calendar. We find out she's like this gypsy from gypsies and the bloodline of the ones who've cursed him with his soul to begin with. And Buffy finds out that she knew, and she flips shit, and they all kick her out of the group, basically. Nobody wants anything to do with her, and Buffy's done with her. So she's trying to make up right and finds the Thorb or the orb of Thessala or something that can give him his soul. She can recurse him and make everything better. Well, little psychic Drusilla, crazy mental psychic Drusilla, knows things are changing and says what's going to happen. And so Angelus stops Jenny, meets her in the school where she's printing out the curse, and he ends up there, breaks the orb, and a chase happens, and eventually he catches her and snaps her neck. Boom, she's dead. And this was like the first major character death in the show. And I remember thinking, did he just fucking kill Miss Calendar? And it's even worse. So they make this man, or this vampire, who was the sweetest, Angel. You really love Angel. And then they make you hate Angel. It's very mind-fucking. He takes her after he kills her, and he stages her in Giles' house where they were planning to meet. She wanted to tell him the great news about the curse. So he comes home, and there's nice opera music on. There's like wine and rose petals everywhere. And he's, thinking, oh, okay. He's so happy because, he's in love with her. He follows the rose petals up the steps, and she's in his bed, but she's just dead. Her eyes are wide open. And there's a picture of her downstairs that he drew of her body laying up there. And it was a moment in the show that it embedded in my brain. And I just remember thinking, Jesus Christ, I think that's the moment that I hated Angel because of that. And I remember they did the scene where I guess he's watching outside of Buffy's house, waiting to see her get the news, and her and Willow were there, and her mom and Joyce, Buffy's mom, is there, and the phone rings, and Buffy's on the phone, and you could just see the moment that he tells her. But it was Willow who broke my heart, because Willow really loved her and looked up to her and helped taught, substitute the class and things like that. That she had like this real big breakdown. And anyone who doesn't know the actress is Allison Hannigan from American Pie and How I Met Your Mother, and just a phenomenal actress. So when she broke down, she just broke my heart. I cried with her, and I was like 12, 11, I didn't understand. So, there's a lot happening in this season. So, Angel went bad. So another story thing that was going on in this season was when Buffy was killed by the Master, another Slayer was activated. So now there are two Slayers, and we meet Slayer number 2, who was Kendra. And I was not happy at all to see another Slayer. Now, looking back and watching it again, I'm more accepting of Kendra, and she was kind of badass, but in the beginning, I didn't like her when she was first introduced. And she was introduced before Angel went bad, and she tried to kill Angel and all that fun stuff, right? So we have two Slayers that are completely different. So Kendra is very structured. She wasn't allowed to go to school and have friends. She has like one outfit, and they made her very complete opposite of Buffy. You know what I mean? Buffy was all about having fun and doing everything else. And so we have Kendra, we have bad Angel, who, killed Miss Calendar, and Spike and Drusilla were introduced. And so there's a lot of new characters. But I remember there was an episode, I think in season 2, think that was the season with when Buffy, yes, she was sick with the flu or something, and then she was in the hospital, and there was an episode there where I don't remember the name of the monster, but only sick kids could see it, and it would like eat their fears and kill them or something. That was a very scary episode. It reminded me of Freddy Krueger a little bit. He had like a weird top hat and a coat. So even in the little episodes, I had like one big major bad that they end up fighting and killing. Angel, I remember trying to come up to the hospital to see her, and he was bad at this time. Things like that really stuck out to me. I was like, I really thought I was impressed with the storytelling of it. So we're going to move forward. And so at this point, Angel has lost his damn soul, lost his damn mind, to be honest. And he wants to end the world. And so at this point, we're thinking, what's he going to do? So he finds this, I don't know what it is he wants to do. I forget what it's called, but it's some statue that if you follow a ritual, you can open a portal to hell. It sucks the whole world to hell. Spike does not want the world to end. So he decides, and he's jealous of Angel and Drusilla. So he decides to enlist Buffy's help to stop Angel in exchange for letting him and Drusilla leave. Buffy gets in trouble, and and her mom eventually, long story short, finds out she finds out she's a vampire slayer, and tells her, they get into a big fight, and she tells her if she goes out that she shouldn't come back. And so the police, at this point, aren't involved, but they're going to be soon, because during the big fight, they needed something from the library. Like Drusilla and Angel needed something from the library, so they send a bunch of vampires to attack the library. And Willow found Mrs. Calendar's curse for Angel and wants to try to finish it, but during the attack, she's badly hurt. Xander's hurt, and Drusilla ends up killing Kendra. And the police come, and they think that it was Buffy, and all this, terrible things are happening. So Willow's at the hospital, and Buffy realizes she has to go and kill Angel, and she finally comes to terms with that, and a big fight, and Willow's still doing the spell, even though Xander told Buffy to, kill him, didn't tell Buffy that Willow was going to try and do the soul restoration because he hates Angel, and we know this. Anyway, so the big fight, and right before, he does get the portal open at this point. The only way to close it is with killing him. Right before she kills him, his soul is restored. And at this point, he has no memory of any of the stuff he's done. And he's just, the last thing he remembers is sleeping with her. And this is just heartbreaking, as he doesn't even realize behind him is this portal that's, got to close with the death of him. And you have this 16, 17-year-old girl, just you could see the emotion. Sarah Michelle Gellar did a phenomenal job of portraying this moment, and it was just terrible. And, she kisses him and tells him she loves him and tells him to close his eyes. And then she stabs him through the chest into the statue, and the statue closes but sucks him to hell. This is just rough for Buffy, and it was rough for as a viewer. But anyway, so we move on to season 3. Season 3, Buffy's in LA, and she's living as, I don't remember the name, Anne. So season 3 was interesting. We introduced us to Faith, the rebel slayer, and the mayor of Sunnydale, who's really evil. And it was the senior year of high school. So season 3, I enjoyed. I don't know, I would say it was my favorite. I enjoyed Faith. As a contrast, I enjoyed hating Faith. I really just did not like her. She got on my nerves a lot. She was a bitch. And I think that's why, but at this point, I was diehard, Team Buffy. Always was. Always will be. Willow starts playing with witchcraft in this season, really getting into it. So that was interesting to me, because I like that they were developing her character differently. And basically, the big bad, the mayor, becomes like a father figure for Faith and brings her to the dark side after Faith accidentally kills a real, a human, which was the person for the mayor. I can't remember that, kind of like, I don't want to say his assistant, but lack of a better word, kind of like his assistant. And Cordelia and Xander were dating, and now they're not because of a lot of other reasons. But and we're introduced to Anya. I like Anya. She was a vengeance demon who can grant any wish. And I remember Anya's quirkiness the most. But basically, she comes when Cordelia is heartbroken over Xander, and he ended up kind of cheating on her with Willow in a way. But she makes a wish that Buffy never came to Sunnydale. Cordelia did, and it's a whole alternate universe where the Master never was killed. He has taken over the Bronze as his lair, and Willow and Xander are vampires. Buffy's in Cleveland, Ohio, or something. Anyway, they end up obviously getting back to their normal realm, but they break the Anya, which her demon name is Anyanka. They break her amulet thing that made her a 1,000-year-old demon, and now she's just a high school girl. She's so weird. I love Anya. So we get to meet her in season 3. We also get to see Amy again. Like I spoke about Amy in season 1. She was the girl whose mother in season 1 was she was a cheerleader, and her mother was also a cheerleader, but also a witch, and took over and did a body swap. Well, Amy is in it now, and she's a witch, and she's kind of friends with Willow, but there was this big kind of almost I don't know how to say, a Salem kind of trial where they had where a demon was coming and making it seem like 2 kids were killed, and it was, witchcraft related, and all the moms, rallied together, and it was really interesting. But anyway, Amy turns herself into a rat, and that's the end of Amy for now. Another episode that I really liked a lot was Helpless, when where Buffy loses her powers because of a thing that Giles does to her that's supposed to happen to every Slayer during their 18th birthday. But I thought that was interesting to show Buffy on a weak side without any strength, and she realizes how much she is the Slayer and relies on those powers. So that was a good one. But we're going to move forward all the way towards the end of the season, where we have one of my most favorite episodes, and you guys on TikTok that see Buffy talk or know much about Buffy is the prom. What a great episode. Now, just a little backstory real quick, because we kind of skipped through a lot of season 3. Angel came back from hell after, being tortured, and he has his soul, and he's better, and they start dating again, and then Joyce tells him that they don't have any kind of life that they can create together. So he ends up breaking up with her, and tells her that after the fight with the mayor, that they realize he's going to be, he's going to leave and go to LA. So he breaks up with Buffy, and that's a rough episode too, because I remember her crying to Willow and the pain. That was rough to watch. But anyway, we're at the prom, and they're doing, Buffy's fighting evil, and everyone gets to go to the prom. And she's making sure that all her friends get to have a great night, and she's fighting these hellhounds. So she saves the day again and changes, and she ends up going to prom, and she's by herself. And I remember Jonathan, he was a nerdy kid. They were giving out awards, and they made a new award for Buffy, and that I remember crying on that when they were doing that speech for her, and everyone talked about the different things that she had done over the years, even though she thought that nobody noticed all the stuff that she's done, and all the students at Sunnydale have noticed, and they presented her with class protector, and they made an umbrella trophy for her, and I thought that was really nice. But then it was even better that Angel showed up in his tux for her, even though they weren't together, and he did say that doesn't change anything. I just really love that episode. And then after that episode was the 2-part season finale of, graduation, where the mayor turns into a giant snake. Now, people, this is the 90s. If you're going to watch this, do not expect like the best effects. The snake looks very CGI, but it's fine. Anyway, they train the entire senior class ready to fight. They tell them we're going to have to fight to the death. Like there's an eclipse, and once the sun is out, the mayor turns into this creature, and they all start fighting. But at this point, right before the end, right before graduation, Buffy goes to try to kill Faith. And so they get into a huge fight, which is one of my favorite fight sequences. And she ends up stabbing her with her own knife, and Faith jumps off the building into a back of a truck, and she looks like she's dead. So we don't know what's going on with her. Find out that she's in a coma. So she brings that knife to graduation and then, throws it in the mayor's face, whose weakness is Faith because he loves her like a daughter. So he chases the Buffy through the school, and she jumps out, and in the library, they've set up like all the explosives and blow up the entire Sunnydale High. That was interesting. I was like, wow, they just, school's out for real. They blew up the whole thing. Season 4, Season 4 is my least favorite. Our big bad this season was Adam. It's like this half robot thing that this underground military thing called the Initiative that lives under UC Sunnydale. It was just very odd. I mean, I liked it. Buffy met Riley, and Xander and Anya start dating, and Willow meets Tara. And I think that's my thing, because before Tara was Oz, and Oz was a werewolf, and Willow loves Oz. And I forgot to even mention Oz at all in season 3. But Oz was a really big part of the show. He found out that, he was a werewolf, so they would keep him locked up. But he ends up leaving Willow. Willow meets Tara and realizes she's gay. And I thought that's what I liked the most about season 4, is the introduction of the LGBT representation in Buffy. And this is, 99, 2000. So it's a little bit more, it wasn't as common. So Spike is taken by the Initiative, gets a chip put in his head, which means he can't hurt anyone anymore. It's like a shock collar for vampires. But anyway, the Initiative, I don't know. They just kind of pissed me off. The military people really pissed me off. But there was a critically acclaimed episode in season 4 that everyone really loved, and I especially loved, which was Hush. The whole episode was basically in silence because of these monsters called the Gentlemen that were so fucking creepy, and you should pause and Google them right now. They steal all the voices, and then they come in to your house and cut your organs out. They have to collect, or cut your heart out. They have to collect 7 hearts or something like that. That episode scared the shit out of me. Riley and Buffy they're cute. Angel's in LA, but he does a couple special appearances, and Cordelia left after, high school. She's in LA with Angel working for him. Xander and Anya, Willow and Tara after the big thing. Not too much going on in season 4 that I can think of that I really, stands out. But I liked Hush. I liked the introduction of Tara. I like that they did the whole thing with Spike, and we can't forget that Faith wakes up and does this weird body switch where she switches bodies with Buffy. She ends up sleeping with Riley. Buffy, because she has a body switch because the Watchers Council wants to take her and lock her up special, because she's a rogue slayer. She needs to be handled outside of police. But anyway, they end up catching her. Like I said, not too much going on for me. Season 5 was probably my favorite next to season 2. There's so much that happened in season 5. And I just really want to get into that one because that's probably going to be the one that I talk about most. Season 5, we see a lot of change. First of all, it opens with an episode of Dracula, and I thought that was interesting. Like, they're finally showing Dracula, but then it ends and we are introduced to Dawn, Buffy's little sister, and it was such a fucking mind fuck. I'm like, who is this? They're like, she never had a sister, and the big bad this season is Glory, and she's a god. and there's a lot happening. And Joyce is sick. She's got a brain tumor, and Riley is off his fucking rocker. He is like addicted to letting other vampires like drink his blood. He gets off on it. It's weird. Like so much happening. It's different dynamics. But the episode I think you all know that I'm going to jump to is first we're going to talk about how we find out how Dawn is there. Dawn is a key that the monks created and created this reality in everyone's brains that she's always been there. Buffy and them always think that she's always been around, but they figure out that she was sent to Buffy to be protected and she's actually a key. They don't tell anyone, but they figured it out. But the episode that really gets me is episode 16, The Body, when the episode before that is such a weird episode with this kid, Warren. He creates like this weird sex robot that is just fucking creepy. Anyway, Buffy comes home and her mom's like on the couch, weird, like just not well. So the episode of The Body is probably one of the episodes that I think really stuck with me the most. So Buffy's mom died. She had an aneurysm, but she's just laying on the couch and Buffy's there. And it's I don't think there's any music in the episode, like no background music or anything. It's so quiet that it's almost like not a show, but like watching someone go through this. I remember and when she goes to tell Dawn, that scene was terrifying. I think there's only one monster in the entire episode, and that's at the end of it. But I remember watching this and she's calling 911 and they're telling her what to do, and she breaks a rib trying to do CPR and she's cold, and then she throws up, and then she's like staring out the door. There's like so much happening in this episode, and it's so rough to watch, but so well done from a like creative standpoint. So I think that really stood out to me in season 5 was the loss of Joyce. That was a major loss, and moving forward, the funeral and Dawn trying to bring her back. That episode scared the shit out of me. She does like this weird spell and you see like the silhouette of her walking up, and then she finally like destroys the picture and the spell is broken before we get to see her. But another big thing that we see in season 5 is, so Glory can't be in, like she's in somebody named Ben, and she comes out here and there, but only for a little bit of time, and then it's back into Ben being, Ben. But she feeds off sanity, so she eats people's sanity. That's why there's like a lot of mental people around or whatever. She feeds on Tara, and now Tara's, mental, and that was rough. And then we're going to go all the way to the end, which the season finale of Buffy was also the last season on the WB. What a interesting episode. So remember I just told you about the robot, the sex robot. So Spike had a sex robot made of Buffy because he's in love with Buffy at this point. They reprogram it and they make her a decoy to fight off Glory while she tries to save Dawn, because Dawn is captured, and Dawn, they figured out Dawn's a key and they capture her, and Buffy's catatonic, and then she snaps out of it, and here we are anyway. The end of season 5 is when Buffy realizes that she has to be the one to close the portal, because the portal's open and the only way to close is if the blood stops flowing, which would be when Dawn's dead. She realizes they made Dawn out of her, so it's the same blood, so she ends up sacrificing herself. She jumps into the mystical energy thing and dies. And I remember thinking, they just killed fucking Buffy? How the hell are they going to make another season? Are they going to make another season? Is it even going to be Buffy? Like, is Dawn going to be the same? Like, I had a lot of fucking questions. Like, there was a tombstone and everything. Season 6, first 2 episodes of season 6 is about resurrecting Buffy. Willow does this spell, and at this point, Buffy's been dead for 3 months. And I remember when they do the spell and they show the spell going down through the ground where she is, and they show her in the casket, but she was dead. She looked dead. She was super decayed, and I was like, oh, that's a very graphic. But she ends up coming back, but she like they I guess assumed that she was going to come back different and not where they left her. But no, that's where that's where she was. So she had to literally claw her way out of there. But season 6, I've really enjoyed. Aside from the stupid, the trio of bad guys. It was like Warren, Jonathan, and Andrew, and they were so geeky. But the other parts of season 6 where Buffy starts sleeping with Spike, and because she was in heaven, she doesn't want anyone to know she's in heaven. Willow's a magic junkie. Giles leaves. It is so much happening in season 6. Xander and Anya are supposed to get married, and he leaves her and doesn't get married, and she ends up becoming a vengeance demon again. There was a musical episode, which was really fun and stupid to watch, but I like how towards the end, it was very rough because Warren is just losing his patience on trying to take down the Slayer and the group. So he actually gets a gun, and Willow, is trying to be better with the magic, and Tara and her had broke up, but they had gotten back together, and the day they get back together and she spends the night, she's getting up and they're sitting and they're talking in their room, and Warren comes in and shoots Buffy, but at the same time, just like the couple shots, one went up and shot and killed Tara, and that shocked the shit out of me. So she's just dead, and Willow loses her fucking mind. Here we meet Dark Willow. Hair literally goes black. She goes and sucks up all the magic she can find. Giles comes back from England. It's a huge fight. Buffy and her fighting like rough. Giles and her fighting what grief can do, and it was rough. She ends up killing Warren. She like skins him or something. Very, very graphic. Talks about turning Dawn back into the key and blah blah blah. So season 6 was cool, and then we get to season 7, the final season of Buffy. At this point, they have rebuilt Sunnydale High, and Dawn is going to school there. Buffy ends up being a guidance counselor. The principal ends up being the son of a vampire slayer that Spike had killed. Spike lost his mind. He went and got his soul. Now he's lost his mind. He's living in the basement. Very interesting season. I think for a final season, it was okay. But I like that the big bad this season was the first evil, and it can take on any dead person's form. It's non-corporeal, like you can't touch you, but it has like the monks that can like attack and things like that. And then there's like the uber vampires. Faith comes back, she's better, she's on the side, and there's a bunch of potential slayers. They are so annoying, people that are gonna possibly be slayers if Buffy or Faith end up dying. One of the episodes, I think one of my favorite episodes in this season was Conversations with Dead People, where each of them face like familiar people. Like Willow talks to a girl that died, a high school student who pretends that she's talking for Tara, and Dawn actually sees Joyce, and it's fucked up. It was just a weird episode, but it ends up being none of them were obviously the real people. It was really the first evil. They find out what the plan is. There's a minister, priest guy, Caleb, who's super strong, and I thought he was going to kill fucking Xander. He poked his eye out. But I'd like to talk about what they decide to do and how they decide to end it. And that is with the final episode. They decide to make all the potential slayers actual slayers. And they have a spell that Willow's going to do. And they're all getting ready to fight the uber vampires. And it's a major fight. And we lose Anya. And I remember watching when she died. That was rough. But everyone else, everyone else makes it. Buffy does get wounded. But Sunnydale is swallowed whole. And they're like, what's next? And we don't know. So anyway, that is a very brief overview of the series and things that, I can think of off the top of my head that I want to discuss about it and things that stood out to me. But I'm going to take the last little bit of this time and really just reflect on the entire series. And what that is to me is Buffy was like a hero. She still is. Watching that every week was my escape, and watching her face things that were in real life and then exaggerate it in the demon sense, but you could take that away. Is like, for example, like I mentioned the episode of the hyenas in season 1 with bullies, but you could see how she handled the bullies. Maybe I could handle them similarly. Things like that. So my mom passed when I was 17 from cancer, and I remember comparing how I was feeling and how I was handling it to the way Buffy did when her mom passed. So Buffy's always been kind of a rule book. Like, she was strong. She fought the evil. And if you think about it, we all have evil that we face, right? We all have heroes that we compare things to. And I think she was really mine. Out of everyone I looked up to, it would be Buffy, which is probably many people's hero. And I think that's why it survived through pop culture, and it's such a big deal. It's been 25 years since it started, and it's still going. It's still got a place. It hasn't been redone, and nobody has touched it, and it's still very much relevant. Even if you go back and watch it, like I said, I watched it a year ago with my husband, and he liked it. And that's saying a lot, because he didn't. It's watching something from a different period. The fashion alone is very 90s, which some of it's a little cringeworthy. But I think that it gives a message of strength and how to face many things that you're going to face in life. I'm not saying that we're going to face the first evil, but we might face things that are similar, and we can take lessons from it and apply it, which is what I've pretty much done. And I think I will always do. I'm 35. I've watched it since I said I was 10 years old, and it's become a survival guide, in lack of a better term, on what would Buffy do? I used to, and Sarah Michelle Gellar was just my idol. If I could meet her, I would be checking off the number one thing on my bucket list, probably. I loved her and Buffy. I watched everything after that. I watched, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream 2, Cruel Intentions. Don't even get me started on that. Scooby-Doo. I follow her on Instagram, Facebook, things like that. I try to see what she's going to do. And, The Grudge. We talked about that, and if you listen to my other episodes, her name gets brought up often. So, there was a spin-off show for Angel. I watched some of it. I probably should start over. I'm just curious on how they started and ended it. But for Buffy, I think the ultimate takeaway for me, as I said, is just resilience and survival and strength, but with integrity. Doing the right thing, making the right choices, even when they're the hard choices to make. And when you're faced with those decisions, it really does determine your character on how you decide to pursue them. You can make the decisions that, like, for example, Faith and Buffy. Faith made bad choices and bad things happened. And Buffy made sacrifices. And I'm not saying that good things always happened. There was a lot of, things that didn't play in her favor, but she did make the hard choices, which made her obviously the ultimate chosen one, even though there's a bunch of all these different slayers now. But I think also the takeaway from that is in women, empowering women and strengthening women and having them stand up and be these strong females. I think that we don't talk enough about that. I think, well, maybe we do talk enough about that now. And I think that's good. I think Buffy had a role in that. So that was my ramble of my all-time favorite show. I could talk about this. I could do another hour, start over and say completely different things, but I'm not going to do that to you guys. But the horror within me is going to be taking a small break but we will be returning with all new episodes and content for everyone in June. So I'm very excited about that. And a lot of things that we want to cover, a lot of different material we want to get into, a lot of different guests. So make sure that you like and subscribe so that you know when we're back. And also follow us on Facebook, check out the blog, check out the Twitch, rate, review, let us know what it is you want us to talk about, any specific things. But yeah, until then, stay spooky.